Week 7 of college football was incredible. We continue to see some exciting results, some upsets, and some things that maybe we didn't expect, but also some super entertaining games. We'll take a look at the top 10 performances from teams this week and look at what each team did to make that so exciting. We're actually going to start at the Division 3 ranks. Now, I'm going to try to do one team that's not maybe a Division 1, an FBS team, maybe do FCS D2 or D3. But one team I do want to highlight at the D3 level is UW Platteville. And probably most people aren't going to know who UW Platteville is, mostly because when you talk about D3, you're talking about North Central, you're talking about Mount Union, you're talking about maybe UW Whitewater. And that's for good reason. But the WIAC, which is the conference that UW Platteville is in, has produced some really good teams outside of Whitewater as well. Platteville is on an absolute roll right now. They just beat number 4 UW River Falls 28-7. This is a River Falls team that was expected to compete for a national championship. Still probably can, but Platteville find a way to beat them. They do that after beating number 3 UW La Crosse last week. So they're 5-0 and they have beat two top 5 teams in the last 2 weeks. That's a team that deserves a lot of credit for what they have done. And it's a team that coming into the year, a lot of people didn't expect too much of. This is a team that was probably picked towards the bottom of the conference, and they are absolutely surprising people. Now, they aren't done yet. They have two ranked matchups coming up in the next 2 weeks. Number 20, UW Oshkosh is up next. And then after that, the aforementioned Warhawks of UW Whitewater are a top 10 team. So that's another opportunity, two other opportunities for UW Platteville to surprise us. Again, the D3 football doesn't get a ton of love, but we're still going to recognize when you beat two top 5 teams, that deserves to be talked about a little bit more. Now, jumping back to the FBS, Vanderbilt continues to surprise people. 2 weeks ago, you beat Alabama, and now you avoid a hangover game by beating Kentucky. Now, that win is obviously not as impressive as beating Alabama, but you have to keep in mind Kentucky did beat Ole Miss. So that's something to keep an eye on and something to talk about. You also avoid the hangover game. Beating Alabama is huge, but you cannot just rest on that. You know that Clark Lee told his team, "We that is not the defining moment of our season. We have other things to do. We have other goals to hit." And you knew that there was going to be some sort of hanger. Playing Alabama and playing Kentucky are not the two same levels of excitement. Your players are not going to get as excited for playing Kentucky as they are for playing Alabama. The one thing I'll say is that Kentucky was a 13 and a half point favorite coming into this game. Vanderbilt definitely took that as disrespect. And that was enough motivation to get them to play well. 20-13 for the Commodores. Diego Pavia continues to be a winner. He's not going to put up the most exciting stats, but he is one of the more entertaining quarterbacks to watch. He does what his team needs him to do. And he's not going to put up gaudy numbers, but he's also someone that's going to be fun to watch, and he's a proven winner. Now, a team that people really aren't paying attention to, but this deserves a lot of love, Tim Albin's Ohio Bobcats. When you look at this season and what we saw in the preseason, this is a team that was picked at the bottom of the conference, a team that was absolutely just ravaged by the transfer portal. They lost a ton of talent. They're 4-2. That is not what anybody expected so far this year. They beat Central Michigan 27-25, and while that performance itself isn't most impressive, it's still a win over a solid MAC team. They jumped out to a 24-0 lead before hanging on at the end, but getting to 4-2 was really impressive. Now, Parker Navarro has been really fun. The former UCF transfer has been a solid quarterback for the Bobcats. Today, or this weekend, I should say, flying under the radar again. 13-22 passing for 147 yards and one touchdown, but it's his legs that have been really impressive. 14 carries for 176 yards. That's 12.6 yards per carry and a touchdown. Again, the Bobcats are one of the most surprising teams, not only in the MAC, but in college football. Another team that continues to surprise us is the Nevada Wolfpack. When you look at what they did this weekend, a 42-37 win over Oregon State is not a result that I don't think anybody anticipated that. I really don't. I think that this is a team that has surprised a lot of people. And when you look at, yeah, they're 3-4, three of their four losses come from a combined 10 points. So if you find ways to get one more score in every one of those games, you're looking at a team that is 6-1. Now, obviously, what ifs, whatever, that's kind of stuff you can't really worry about. But this is a team that continues to fly under the radar, a team that continues to be a tough team to beat. And you're looking at a very fun team that is looking at a bowl game suddenly. And Jeff Choate knew that he was going to take over a program that was, I think, very disappointing up until that point, and they have found a way again to be a surprise so far this year, and that's been really exciting. And I think they are going to be a very tough team in a conference in the Mountain West that is super exciting and super competitive. Northwestern's up next, and this is a team that a lot of people expected to take a step back. And you didn't expect them to beat certain teams like the Marylands of the world. Now, last year they beat Maryland in a surprising fashion, and you kind of expected that that was going to be an exception. However, Maryland is just obviously not up to the task, and Northwestern continues to surprise people once again. A 37-10 win for the Wildcats. Absolutely surprising. Not a result that anybody saw coming. They forced 4 Maryland turnovers to win this game. And I think that you're looking at a team that is going to be a gritty team, a tough team to beat. Bryce Kurtz with another big game. That's 2 consecutive weeks for him. And the other side of the ball, Theron Johnson is turning into a stud. This is a guy who has been a lockdown corner for the Wildcats. He has been really fun to watch. And he was super good against Maryland. You looked at Maryland passing attack and thought that they were going to be a dominant group at times. You've seen some really exciting plays from them, but Aaron Johnson has been really good for Northwestern as well, and he had a big game against the Terrapins. The Texas Longhorns took care of business, and while it may not be the most impressive win, it was still impressive to beat Oklahoma 34-3. I think there were some thoughts that this could be a closer game. Texas left no doubt that this was going to be their win. They were going to take over and they were going to make sure that they were the best team on that field. And Oklahoma obviously is going through some things. They got to figure some things out. And Texas did not feel sorry. Scored 34 unanswered points after Oklahoma kicked a field goal to go up 3-0. And that was really impressive. Quinn Ewers comes back to the lineup. They don't ask him to do a ton, which is not unexpected. I think that just getting him back into the swing of things, and especially if you're going to be as dominant as you were, that obviously was going to play a big role in that. The rushing attack continues to step up when they need them. Quintrevin Wisner had a big game, 13 carries for 118 yards, 9.1 yards per carry, and a touchdown. He is someone who everyone kind of expecting him to take on a bigger role. It's just a matter if he could handle that level of importance. And so far, he and Jaden Blue have done a pretty good job. Texas, again, remains undefeated and has a huge matchup coming up against the Georgia Bulldogs. The Iowa Hawkeyes had a big game against the Washington Huskies. The Huskies were coming off a huge win over the Michigan Wolverines, and you expected this one to be close. You did not expect what happened, which was a 40-16 win for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Iowa is not, I mean, the running joke obviously is about the offense. Putting up 40 points against that Washington defense, I think is kind of being understated right now. That's an underrated win for the Iowa Hawkeyes. And honestly, putting up 40 points against that defense, it needs to be talked about a little bit more. The fact that they were able to score at that rate, especially with the offense needing to take a step. And so far, I think at times you've seen this Iowa team struggle to be able to do that against Washington is very impressive. That's a huge win for this program and keeps their Big Ten championship hopes alive. And you saw kind of a familiar formula still. You saw Caleb Johnson do his thing, 21 carries for 166 yards, 7.9 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns. So Michigan was, or I should say, Washington was coming off that Michigan win. You expected them to maybe have that momentum, and Iowa took it to them. Absolute impressive performance by the Iowa Hawkeyes, and it's really fun to see how they're playing, and maybe they can find a way to adapt and get to Indianapolis, and we'll see what happens from there. Kansas State was going on the road to face the Colorado Buffaloes, and it was an incredible atmosphere. The Buffs had a number of celebrities on the sideline. The fans packed the stadium, and it was a great atmosphere. We'll talk more about what Colorado's importance to college football in a little bit, and actually, we'll probably do another video on it. But this is a team in Kansas State that is going through some tough times. I think that at times, which I should say, even the preseason, we all expected Kansas State to be competing for a conference championship. And I don't think there was any doubt that they were going to be one of the 2 best teams in this conference. They currently sit tied for third in the conference, so that hasn't changed. It was just the BYU game was so surprising that I think a lot of people took a step back and started questioning some things. I don't think you have to question much anymore. Beating Colorado obviously is maybe not the win that a lot of the majority of people would say is a good win, but this was a good win. It's a gritty win on the road with Avery Johnson struggling with that oblique. That was kind of a weird thing to see him throw and come down with that injury, but he obviously persevered. This is a team that bounced back and found ways to be successful against this Colorado team. They stayed poised in a loud atmosphere. And even when Colorado took a late lead, Kansas State marched right down the field and responded with a touchdown of their own. Jace Brown had a huge game, 6 catches for 121 yards, 20.2 yards per catch, and 2 touchdowns. And then you look at DJ Giddens has been a stud, and he continues to be a player that flies under the radar. 25 carries for 182 yards. He also caught 2 passes for 38 yards. This is a guy who a lot of people expected big things from in 2024, and he has delivered. He has been a really exciting player, and he had a huge game when they needed him to. The defense also did its part, and it was really fun to watch this defense at times get after Shedeur Sanders. 6 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, and a lot of those came at big times. That's a defense that, again, you don't, if you're talking about anybody outside of the Big 12, you probably can't name a single player on Kansas State's defense. You lost some players to the transfer portal and to the NFL graduation. So it's easy to see why, but this is a group that continues to be really exciting and a really tough group to beat. If you watch the night slate of week 7, you were not disappointed. And that was a slate that shows you exactly why college football is this best sport in the world. LSU found a way to win at home in overtime against Ole Miss, and it was a game that you really saw the greatness that was Garrett Nussmeier. Now, Garrett Nussmeier plays the game with a ton of confidence. That is something that makes him such a good quarterback. It also kind of gets him in trouble. I think that he is one of those quarterbacks that has a lot of confidence in his arm. Sometimes, though, that's too much confidence. That being said, his confidence is what won them this game. You look at the last couple throws that he made in this game, that was the reason why they won this game. And when you look at the post that ties things up late in the game, you look at the throw that he makes. He throws the ball before the receiver is even open, and he throws his guy open. He throws into the window where his guy is going to be. A great throw. Then the touchdown to Kyron Lacy, throws it to the back shoulder and lets Lacy make a play. Just a smart play by him, and a reason why he's going to be a really exciting player at the next level, assuming he can obviously correct the mistakes. But LSU, believe it or not, LSU is 5-1. And I think with how we talked about LSU a couple weeks ago, you might have thought that this was a season that they were trying to rebuild or even just reload for next year. They're 5-1, and they just beat a top 10 team in Ole Miss. Now, I'm not saying that this is a team that can easily compete for a conference championship, but they're in that conversation. That was a big win for LSU to build the confidence, continue to build the confidence, because I think that week 1 loss to USC obviously what was painful and had to make this group rethink what's going on. Then you lose Harold Perkins. They have bounced back in a huge way. And when you look at what this team has done, I think that this is an LSU team that is very dangerous. They are discovering how to play with each other instead of leaning on certain pieces. I think that USC game was more had more to do with that they were trying to figure out who they were, who was going to be their go-to guys, maybe some chemistry between the quarterback and wide receivers. This is a really fun team, and this past weekend showed us exactly why Garrett Nussmeier is going to be really exciting to watch. And if he irons out some of those mistakes, this is a very dangerous team. Finally, the Oregon Ducks. This shouldn't be a surprise. A 32-31 win over Ohio State. And this game had the most random stuff happen. Now you still had some really exciting things. We'll go into that in a little bit, but you had a missed interception by Jabbar Muhammad that wasn't looked at, was not reviewed, which seemed to be kind of a theme with this game. I don't know, it's just kind of all over the place with reviewing things versus not. You also had the Derek Harmon fumble recovery, which at first I think was kind of just glossed over, and I'm surprised that the refs didn't look at the interception, but they looked at this one. And when you look at how quickly he took the ball from Quinshon Judkins. I think most people would have just moved on. We wouldn't have even thought twice, hey, this was actual fumble recovery. Because when you look at football, you see a lot of times where guys like come out with the ball and they say, "Oh, I took this away from him," and it's like, well, no, he was down for at least 2 seconds before you got the ball. I think that it was such a weird play that I'm still surprised that they reviewed that, but they didn't review the interception. But they review it, they see that Derek Harmon clearly ripped the ball out, and it gets the ball back to Oregon. That was really exciting. You also had a botched snap on an extra point that led to a grenade interception, a terrible throw by the holder, but that's also why he's the holder and not the quarterback. An onside kick by Oregon that drilled a player to get the ball back. You also had a spitting ejection. You had a lot of weird things in this game, and most of that was in the first half. The game obviously settled down, and we got into what was just a back and forth battle between two really good things. Will Stein called a masterpiece of a game. He had a number of different plays for Ohio State to have to worry about. You finally got to see them open up the playbook a little bit more, and even some of the things they did, just finding ways to get certain guys in good positions. I think that he did a great job. That's going to be something that probably flies under the radar because you talked about the players. Will Stein called an absolute masterpiece of a game, in my opinion. A really good game. Having Dylan Gabriel, this is why you brought Dylan Gabriel to Oregon. To have him compete and play it at a high level in this game. 23 of 34, 341 yards and 2 touchdowns. And we actually got to see Dylan Gabriel throw the deep ball. We also got to see him throw to his right. You saw him do a number of things that were really exciting, and he was the big reason why they win this game. Now, we'll also look at some underrated performances. Jordan James had 115 yards and 1 touchdown, and that's not going to get talked about a ton, but he is someone that deserves a lot of love for what this team has done so far. And he had a solid game against an Ohio State defense that a lot of people were worried for Oregon if they can handle that. They stepped up in a big way. James did what he needed to do, and that also allowed the passing attack to do its thing. Dylan Gabriel obviously played well. He found connection with Evan Stewart, who finally had his breakout game for the Oregon Ducks. 7 catches for 149 yards, 21.3 yards per catch, and 1 touchdown. That was a huge performance when they needed him. He made some big time catches, some tough catches when they needed him to. And again, this was just a great overall game. Both sides looked really fun to watch. I think that they're both still very much in contention for a national championship. It was a good game, a great way to wrap up the night, or at least get us towards the end of the night, and a really exciting game. Dan Lanning made some really nice decisions. I don't think I question any of those tough decisions that he made. And he obviously, unlike last year, got some of those to work in his favor. We saw last year he made some, I don't want to say questionable, just some different decisions, and they just didn't work out. This team didn't execute. Tonight they did. Tonight, this I say it like it's tonight. This weekend they did. They found a way to win. They found a way to execute, and that's what makes them the top team from this past weekend. A really exciting win puts Oregon on the fast track towards the Big Ten championship as well as the college football playoff. And we will see how things go from here. They obviously have unranked Purdue on Friday night. That's going to be something that's talked about all week, but we'll see what the Oregon Ducks have in store for us. It's been a very interesting year for this team, and this big win against Ohio State adds to that excitement.